just some of the simplest things that we do can have such a profound impact on somebody else's direction in life. I've always kind of found myself in those leadership roles, and I think it's because I feel that I want to make a positive difference. I feel that I have a certain skill set that I can bring to the table that'll help move an organization or a team in a direction that's successful. If you have to announce who you are as a leader, you're probably really not a leader.
Dr. Keith Hartbauer, Superintendent of Brownsville Area School District, is a dedicated educator and administrator with over 30 years in public education. Under his leadership, the district earned national and state recognition as a school of choice and a district to watch. Committed to academic excellence and community engagement, he fosters success through initiatives like the Legislator Coffee and Chat to collaborate on educational advancements.
A leader is somebody that is uplifting, trying to motivate, trying to help people become a better version of themselves, not so much micromanaging the day-to-day operations of the schools. Kids are coming back to us or have come back to us and their soft skills are not there. Their ability to agree to disagree, their empathy, their self-discipline, goal setting. It doesn't matter if that child is not right from their basic skills. It doesn't matter what you throw at them academically, they're not going to get it.
Dr. Keith, tell us about your latest passion.
And my latest passion has been trying to change gears a little bit from the role of a superintendent, I guess now kind of like a recovering superintendent, if you will, into a connecting, consulting, relationship type of phase of my life where, as I look back on it throughout my career, some of my most satisfying days and years of my career is when I was coaching. And the part about coaching that resonates the most with me was the relationships you build. And that's kind of what I miss. And having the opportunity now in my career to work on building, establishing relationships and connecting people and resources to people that would help them in the long run. I'm finding a lot of passion and a lot of value with that as well.
And you feel that with your role as a superintendent, you weren't ticking all the boxes?
No, I felt in my role in the superintendent, which I truly loved. I loved being in the leadership role. I loved being in the room, loved trying to solve problems, complex problems, and also and ultimately to make it a better place, right? And that sense of relevancy, right? That you work. I think we all aspire to do better in many areas and with people. But I found myself as I went along that I spent a whole career learning and going to school and doing all kinds of things to become an educational leader. But I also found later on the time spent on education was minimal. And that became frustrating for me a little bit. So it was a time where I had to, make some pretty hard decisions, see which direction I wanted to go. But I thoroughly enjoyed the time sitting in that seat. And I'm also thoroughly enjoying slowly transitioning out of the seat as well.
And how do you feel now? Like, what's the feeling of this new role?
It's invigorating, right? Because I'm getting an opportunity to meet new people, hear about new companies, things that will benefit kids or promote education, and the opportunity to connect the two from companies to school districts, and hopefully that allows both parties to achieve success on the back end.
So do you feel that you're going to be able to contribute better in a better way now, serve them in the better way?
I think it's in a completely different way. It's a different pathway. I think that it's more so as a advocate, maybe to advocate for school districts, and so the businesses understand exactly, the ins and outs of what's required, and then also for businesses so that they understand the back and forth that has to go on to make a good partnership.
Yeah, but your love is in education, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's
Your
an
heart.
in teaching. I look back at it, it's, to simplify it, it's when you can take a skill set and you can break it all the way down and then fundamentally build it back up and that person then achieves more success. Take a great deal of pride in seeing somebody else achieve something because they put the time, work, and effort in to doing it the right way.
And let's say that there there could be some people listening right now who are in this same phase as you, like transitioning, thinking of transitioning maybe and moving out of a leadership position like that to another position. What should they put in their toolkit from what they have experienced so far and take it with them with like whatever role they're going to have right now?
I think the thing that helped me the most is I really had to, think clearly, as I stated a little bit earlier, what was it that really resonated with me that I valued the most, right? And again, that was the relationship. So I think anybody that's transitioning out, they need to be planned and have some type of preparation and plan in place so that when they do go, they're stepping right into it. I think often many people they stop something and they really don't know what they want to do next. Um, and I've always been one of those persons that's been kind of like a balcony view person. I'm always like thinking, what's my next step? So I'm always like a year or two ahead. Sometimes that was my greatest strength. Sometimes that was my greatest weakness, right? But I think the thing is to have some type of a plan based on what your passion is, right? The book, The Element by Dr. Sir Ken Robinson, I read years ago. And it basically talks about when a person is in their element or their passion and they're doing that for their work, they can't help but be successful. So my advice would be look back at your career. Was it curriculum? Was it finance? Was it relationships with kids? What was it in your career that you really enjoyed the most? And then parlay that into something that you want to do in the next phase.
Beautiful advice. And what keeps you motivated now to move on? Like this is a new beginning for you, obviously.
I
This.
think what keeps me motivated is the sense to try to remain relevant, right? I think when you're in leadership roles, there's always that sense of relevancy where you're in the middle of everything, and when it stops, it stops. And the only way I can really explain it is those of us who have had kids and that we run them all around God's creation to all these different events, and all of a sudden they're growing up and they're out of the house, and all of a sudden it just stops, right? And then there's like this void, like, oh, shouldn't we be doing something? Well, you're going to have that void when you do stop. So what is it that's going to replace that void? And that's why I think it's so important that there's a transition. And everybody's different. Some people like to jump in and do a million and one things, and other people want to try to do it gradually. I'm somewhere in the middle phase of that. And I think that's the key. Just always knowing where you want to go and how you're going to get there.
And what informs this new like plan now? How how do you get what resources are you using to build the new plan, the new day?
Well, the latter part of my career, as I started attending some of these conferences and connecting with the different vendors and so forth, and having conversations with them and understanding, what their obstacles are and where their frustration is that they can't really get to a superintendent because, in all honesty, superintendents are extremely busy. And if it goes to the email, they're not going to answer it. If they try to call, their secretaries aren't going to put them
Mm.
through. So the value is for them to get a face-to-face or to be able to meet with them. So I started thinking in my mind, well, how can I how can I kind of be that middle person, right? How can I be that person that kind of helps out that creates the relationships, not the sales part of things, as I told them, I don't want to have anything to do with sales, but if there's a school district that's maybe having some special education issues that they need to overcome, connect them with a company that is very strong in that, and then let that relationship foster among itself. So those were kind of the thought processes that were going through my head as I started to, think how I wanted to transition out. And then ultimately I want to get into some mentoring and some coaching, maybe administrative coaching to help young administrators, uh, I always wanted to teach the class and entitle it "What They Never Taught You," right? So something along that line, the things that you get hit with that you're just not prepared to until you're actually in the seat.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. And you've been like you are all obviously experienced. Give them some tips of what to leave behind. What should somebody leave behind on the whether they transition or not? Like year after year, we make changes, we reinvent ourselves. What should somebody leave behind when they're a leader in a school?
I've never really looked at it that way. I've always looked at it in a way that when I went into a place that I always wanted to leave it in a better spot than when I found it. Okay. And some people are in great places, but there still could be that one or two little things or that one or two little niches that they may have that made it better. Whether it was a procedure, whether it was a policy, whether it was a cultural change, anything along that line. I think that's significant. I think that as as we move on and we go there, all of us kind of earn for a little bit to have somebody remember us for something, right? And
Mhm.
hopefully it's on a positive note. But when you're in a leadership role as a superintendent, it gets very, very difficult, especially in today's world, right? Because the country and mankind, honestly, they're divided, and it's either one way or the other, and it often puts a superintendent in a very, very difficult position. And on any given phone call, any given decision, they could be fighting for their lives, and then that
Mhm.
consumes you, and it becomes extremely stressful. And there's ways in which I think that you can handle it. There's ways in which I wish that I would have handled things better. Um, but those are always hindsight things that maybe I can take to the next person so they don't make the same mistakes I did. So I think those are all things that I would like to probably, give back at some point.
Mhm. 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 And obviously, when you help somebody, you see yourself growing. Do you remember a point where, while you were helping a colleague, a peer, um, somebody in your team, that you saw yourself growing through this process while helping others?
Yeah, actually, for me, it goes back years to coaching. I had a young man that was a phenomenal athlete, and unfortunately, I had to throw him off the team. And it was probably about 4 or 5 years later, just out of the blue, I was driving home from work one day and I got a phone call from him. And he just reached out to me and he said, I just want to thank you. You're the first person that ever held me accountable and it changed my life around. Right. And that was so powerful. I just never forgot it. Right. And he had no reason to call other than he felt obligated that there was a point in his life that was critical for him. Right. Not that I ever wanted to do that or he had to learn it the hard way, but I also saw myself growing in a fact that just some of the simplest things that we do can have such a profound impact on somebody else's direction in life.
And who was that person who had this kind of impact on your life?
Oh man, there's so many. Obviously one would be my family. My father was, very understanding. He was the type of father that if something really successful happened, he had a way of humbling me. And if something really bad happened, he had a way of picking me back up. So he always kind of kept me even keel. I was fortunate enough when I started out in teaching that I had two or three gentlemen that were probably maybe 10 to 15 years older than me that really took me under their wing and provided great mentorship for me and great role models. And I was able to steal different things, skill sets that they have and try to adapt them to mine. And I think that how many people don't get that opportunity, right? That they don't get a good mentor or a good role model to start out with. And I was so fortunate to have that, moving forward. So I would say that, those three or four early on mentors and my family.
And while I'm doing these episodes for this podcast, I'm always trying to find out if the reason somebody is in a leadership position like yours is because of these people that were along that the leaders met along the way. Do you think this holds any true?
I think there's a lot of truth in that. Because you can see firsthand the impact that they have made on you and on other people. But I'm also, I believe in this quote too. I heard it a long time ago. It was from the Hall of Fame quarterback, Fran Tarkenton. It was leadership is demonstrated, it's not announced, right? So if you have to announce who you are as a leader, you're probably really not a leader. I think of a leader as somebody that is, uplifting, trying to motivate, trying to help people become a better version of themselves, not so much micromanaging the day-to-day operations of the schools. You should be hiring people that you've done your homework and you trust them to do their job. Now it's your job to make them the best possible person that they can be for that position.
Mhm. So I would translate it as like you meet the right people along the way, but at the same time you take action.
Right. And I think a lot of it's personality too. I really do, and leaders can have many different types of personalities. They could be type A and be strategic. They could be type A and be empathetic. They could be type B and be something else, right? So but I think it's all in the approach, and I think a lot of it's the drive. And As I look back on my career, from my early days as an athlete to, in key positions, either as a pitcher or as a quarterback to a head football coach, to a vice principal, to a principal and so forth. I've always kind of found myself in those leadership roles. And I think it's because I feel that I want to make a positive difference. I feel that I have a certain skill set that I can bring to the table that'll help move an organization or a team in a direction that's successful.
Mhm. And where do you see education going in the near future, not in the distant future?
Well, that's a
The next,
loaded question now. Yeah, it really is. I'm nervous. I have a daughter that's starting out. She's only in her third year as a teacher. And I'm nervous for what her career is going to look like. I really am. I think public education is going to change drastically in the next 5 to 10 years. And I think the key to any education, I think the educational system in itself is whichever platform, whichever direction it goes, whichever one is the most flexible, um, I think is going to be the one that's being successful. If people are going to be held to hardcore standards and this is the way it was, I think it's doomed for failure. I think that the way a child comes to school and the way a child learns now, especially post-COVID, and the way parents think that they should be educated now are is almost a 180-degree turn, right? So why couldn't a child come in the morning and do some work and then leave, in the middle of the day and do an online class or whatever, and then do an apprenticeship in the evening or vice versa, or 2 days out of the 5 days. The structure, I think, of arriving at 7:30 on a bus and leaving at 3:30 on a bus and spending 8 periods in high school, I think that's going to change, and hopefully it's going to change for the better. But I think it's going to take a lot of things from educational systems, um, communities, systems, politicians, understanding that the whole thing needs to be revamped in a way that's going to be best for the way that kids learn today.
Mhm. And what is one change that you're picking that is really pivotal right now? That if this change happens, then we're going to see a new turn in education.
Yeah, I think so. I think the way that we instruct has got to drastically change. Number one, the days of standing in front of you and talking to you about World War II and this is what happened and just lecturing for 42 minutes. It's just the kids aren't going to be able to deal with that. They're programmed now. They're the TikTok kids, right? That everything's 3 minutes or less. And you need to. I firmly believe that educators no longer have to be the sole source of content because that content is readily available to that child through technology right now, primarily their phones. On any given second, they could Google and get what they need, right? And I think that as soon as we make that adjustment from being an instructor to a facilitator, we still need to know our content. We still need to do that. But how do we facilitate so that the kids are using the right sources? They're going to the right places. They're getting the right amount, the right information to then come up with the conclusions that they need to learn. I think that's going to be the key. And the hard part is when you're in education, you have some people that have 30 to 35 years in, and you have people that are just starting out 5 to 10. And there's a huge gap between the way those 30 and 35-year-old teachers were taught to instruct and these new teachers. And
Yeah.
with that shift also, what are the universities doing? The universities need to make a drastic shift as well, that the old style of the methodology of instruction has to change, and they need to prepare these kids for a much faster paced, digital paced world that connects kids.
Yeah. And in this instruction time, let's call it instruction time because it is obviously now, what should the teachers be focusing on if the teaching, the instruction is removed?
Yeah, I don't think the instruction is ever removed. I think they need their approach to it, right? So, um, are there things that they can do instead of sending homework home for them to do? Maybe now they can, when the kids go home, they're logging on and they're hearing the 10 or 15-minute lecture ahead of time. So then when they get
Yeah.
to the class, when they get to the classroom, there may be different stations or setups based on knowledge, based on content, based on whatever, and learning styles, so that teacher then can circulate around the room and make sure that those kids are learning and moving forward in a direction that at their own pace, I guess is what I'm saying. Because every child learns differently and every child learns at their own pace. And then trying to find that happy medium for a teacher. I know teachers right now, because of state mandates that they have certain regimented things that they need to do through the course of the year. I have to be at this point so I can get this in so that the child's ready to take the test. I'm not sure that's the best way for a child to learn, right? So why can't we somehow adjust how we're doing all that from a curricular standpoint to an instructional standpoint to an assessment standpoint? Why can't we adjust that we're not forcing something down a child's you know, down a child's throat that maybe they're just not ready to go, or they're, they just need a little bit more time being nurtured in a certain content area.
And what is one skill that these students should be taught? Like, we cannot teach skills, obviously. What skill should we help them hone while they're in school?
And that's the other shift, right? So we're talking about we've always been the skills that we need to know our math or English, or science. We need to know these basic skills to build upon this skill, to build upon that skill. But what I've noticed really since post-COVID is kids are coming back to us or have come back to us, and their soft skills are not there, right? Their ability to agree to disagree, their empathy, their self-discipline, goal setting. I know all those types of things that I think are important. And if those skills are worked on and focused, and I think school districts are going to have to spend more time doing that, then the other stuff is going to come, right? And what we're also finding out too in the district that I was at, that was very socioeconomically challenged, was we're getting kids that are coming into our school systems that their basic needs aren't even being met. They're not being met at home. They're not being met by the community. So now the school has to spend a lot of time just trying to get them into an area where they feel safe and they feel nurtured, right? So it doesn't matter if that child is not right from their basic skills. It doesn't matter what you throw at them academically, they're not going to get it. So you got to make sure that the basic skills are taken care of before any academic skill sets are moved forward. And I think that schools need to slow down a little bit and understand that.
Yeah, very important decision. And if this decision is made, I see a lot of shifts coming, like the side effect just from this decision. If the focus on the soft skills is made and it's done, and there is a process to that, then everything else is just going to fall into place, right?
Right. And I think there needs to be, and there are things that are moving in that direction. There are groups and platforms and things that are out there that are really getting a child to understand who they are and what they are so they can maybe have a better career pathway, right? So, and when I look back at it as a young kid coming out, I really had no idea what I wanted to go into. And I was fortunate that I had a gentleman that kind of geared me or led me in a positive direction. But there are things now where kids are learning about who they are and what they are early on in the middle school years. And then as they move through middle school, I think in middle school and high school, we then need to give them those core basic skill sets, right? But then we also need to give them a pathway that's based on their area of interest, their pathways, their passion, I mean, and let them choose that. So then how do you mirror that with careers that kind of match a child's passion, right? And I think we need to do a better job of that. It used to be, well, I'm just going to grow up and be a policeman, a fireman, an astronaut, or whatever. Well, now every day, every kid wants to be a YouTuber, right? So, but what is a YouTuber? What other components of YouTube are there? And it's kind of like a bank. You think, oh, it's a bank. It's where I go get my money. There's a teller. No, there's a custodian. There's a secretary. There's a finance person. There are many different facets in every type of job, and I think we need to do a better job of connecting those facets from all those various jobs to a child's passion.
Beautiful. Because this is going to change, like the kid themselves and make them more motivated to work on themselves, like inspire them to.
Absolutely. I think all of us like to go through education, and I was one of them. When I was in high school, my major focus was who are we playing today? What's the game or what's going on, right? It wasn't necessarily where I was going to be in 5 or 10 years when I got out of school. So I think um, that mindset of trying to find that niche for a kid is so critical because once you can put value to something, you're going to have a tendency to want to learn it more, right? Once I could put value that this is what I was going to do, it was just like in college, like the elective classes, they were the elective classes, but the classes that I was taking in the core subjects that I wanted to go into, right? It came very easy to me because that's what I wanted to do. And I think that's where we need to get in the K to 12 realm as well.
Yeah. And the awareness that we cannot predict the future. So what if we equip the students themselves navigate the future without our support, without needing us? That's going to be Like a
And
beautiful.
again, that's where those soft skills comes in, right? Resiliency, understanding that there's nothing wrong with failure as long as you learn from it. How to get back up on your feet, how to handle success. I think all those types of things are so important for a child now because, like we said earlier, that content is already there for them. They just need to know how to handle it, and then they need to handle themselves in certain situations. Um,
Mhm.
so I think that's the most critical part that we need to look at.
Yeah, and this is what we should be like spreading the word for this and as much as possible.
Yep.
Okay, so Keith, for the final part of this conversation, I have a game and I play a game with my guests. And I have these
Okay.
five books here, and I want you to choose one of the books, and I'll explain the process, how it goes.
All right. Like them all. You have to get your book list. Let's go with oh, it's between hidden potential and high performance habits. I'm going to go outside my comfort zone and go hidden potential.
Okay, okay. So it's from Adam Grant. And give me one page.
Let's go with 111. Does it go that high?
No, it's good, I
Or
guess. Found it. Yeah, and a line.
yeah,
Give me a
I
line.
can't. I don't have a line. Do you have a?
Like it's about 20 lines, maybe. So just give me a number.
Okay, so
I
you just
mean,
want me to pick a number.
yeah, pick a
Um,
number.
let's go with 12.
12. Okay. Okay, I'll start from the previous sentence so we can make the context. Um, the good news is that to start moving, we don't actually need a map. All we need is a compass to gauge whether we're heading in the right direction. Depending on the skill you're trying to learn, you might discover a compass in a book, on the web, or in a conversation. A good compass signals when you're going off course and orients you in a better direction. Do you want to read it again?
No, I think that's good. So we're talking about um start the very first thing that you said.
Mhm.
Start. You said something at the first three line words of that sentence.
Yeah. That to start moving, we don't actually need a map. All we need is a compass to gauge whether we're heading in the right direction. And depending on the skill you're trying to learn, you might discover a compass in a book or on the web or in a conversation. A good compass signals when you're going off course and orients you in a better direction.
I think that kind of correlates what we're talking about, right? Today, it really does. It's so weird that we picked that and that kind of came out that way. When we talked about like public schools were built, in the early 1900s in an industrial age, and these were the things we needed, and this was the structure you had to have, and this was everything that had to be done to get the outcomes that you want. Well, now we know that that's not necessarily true, and how does that happen? So if you talk about moving in a direction, when a child enters kindergarten to the time they're done in 12th grade, to the time whatever their next avenue is, whether it's career, whether it's post-secondary, whatever it is, there's a trajectory that they're going to go on. So I think that again, it comes down to if you look at that from a compass standpoint, maybe you make it more humanized and you say a mentorship, right? Um, who is that? Who is that peer mentor? Who is that elderly mentor? Who is that career mentor that's going to help and always that's going to be that good compass? It's always going to bring that person back. Um,
Yeah.
I think like I often think too that you never want to stifle somebody's creativity, but so often we do, right? Why do
Mhm.
elementary children, when you ask them to draw something or do something, they're all over the place and they have these neat little ideas. And then by the time they're in high school, it's not like it's real clear. And it's like there's something there. Like we stop some type of creativity there. Allow that creativity to continue throughout their entire life, I think is a crucial point. So
Mhm.
I think that line kind of parallels education, right? Allow the kids to go at their own pace, right, with their own passion and a direction, but allow mentors along the way to keep them on that path.
Yeah, very good. And allow them to trust that
Mhm.
they have the compass already. They don't need
Mhm.
the map.
Right,
Need to
right.
trust themselves, the mentor.
Let them trust themselves and the process, right?
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you so much.
Thank
So
you.